Welcome back to my podcast. I'm your host with the most Lesego M Video Report, aka Future and maybe you might get a chance to call me Daddy like Cairo. Song of the day is Gumantin Day by DJ Maporis Tyler ICU, just to mention a few. There's a lot of features in that song. So yeah man, it's another day, another episode. I feel like I have a short breath. I don't know why. So yeah man, let's get to it. So I'm your host with the most Lesego M Video Report, aka Future and maybe you might get a chance to call me Daddy like Cairo. So yesterday we spoke to talk about the elections and how everything went down, and yeah, not a lot of views on that episode, yesterday's episode, so now we're just moving on from that, and I'm aware that in anything that involves politics, except when you talk about, except when you like have content that's being repurposed, right? So by content repurposement, meaning you take long form content, you turn that into like shorter clips, wherever you have like hooks, where you feel like, oh, this is an interesting thing that is relatable to a huge portion of your audience, and it might get you new followers, it might get you new listens or engagement or whatever the case may be. So you take those, you repurpose them in all the social media platforms. So I think it's the only time actually that you get a higher number when it comes to like when it comes to talking about politics and elections and whatever that has to do with like the politics and whatever, because a lot of people, even it's not even like my target audience that is listening to those kind of episodes where you talk about the socio-economic growth of the country or whatever the case may be. It's not like the target audience that's listening to those episodes. So I'm very much aware, and at the moment I just forgot to go to like, this is like the pocket. So every content that you release, you always need to pay in mind in your pocket. Pocket is in money pocket, but as in like your niche. You need to like understand your niche. This is the do's, these are the do's, and these are the don'ts. So I felt like sometimes that thing alone, so like I lose it a bit, because I'm like, oh, this is like what's been going on all around South Africa. So maybe it's a good thing that you talk about it, and man, that's maybe the reason that episode didn't do as well as I thought it should. Because I guess important at the back of my mind would see that the content and the niche, it was a bit of like a conflict of interest there. Now I was like, this is like the mistake that we made, and like the expectation wasn't supposed to be that high, because also again, when you an audio only based platform where you don't have like visuals or videography, tend to like lead to what the people would actually go out and like find new platforms, people who are within the ecosystem of the podcast, who like, okay, like I'm into like listening to the new podcast, the podcast that's shaping, or you understand, like that's shaping whatever that I wanted to say. So the point that I wanted to make now is, a lot of the people that listen to podcasts, it's people who are readers who listen to audio-based podcasts. Let me just say that. It's people who are into books, people who read books, people who love audio content, people who love radio. So the entire ecosystem. You won't find someone, if you've never done video before, haven't done like visuals of your podcast before, coming to your platform and saying, okay, I'll be the first person to do this. At least if it's someone who's closer to you, who's there to support you, in that niche with, okay, where this is gonna take me, I'm not. So like if it's consistency, you really won't have consistency for sure, because it's like this is like out of habit for this person. It's how they reach, because it's not amongst the things they do each and every day. Because it's someone who's always on YouTube every day. So if I'm to release that, then they bump it. It's like, okay, branding has always been a part of the cycle of things that they do within a day. So as opposed to like Spotify or like Apple Podcast or like whatever, whichever platform you listen to your podcast from, it's highly unlikely that someone is going to, unless if it's someone who is always in their platform, to like, okay, like what's new, who's saying what in South Africa, what podcast, and is it audio based only or like this videography? It's hard to navigate through, and to release niche based content and also be an audio based only platform, it's very hard to like really like get huge conversions, and also taking into mind like the technical things, like how you sound, or like how in general the podcast setup is, because sometimes you find your voice is not, someone might think Uguti is cringy. He's like, I like this is not the voice that I want to hear when I listen to someone who's talking about something interesting, or someone within the base of my interest. So I think sometimes it might be the voice. When you need a software engineer would say, okay, like we should just wipe A, B, and C out of this audio, or like it's just certain things that you can do, and you're like, okay, to the content and make it presentable for the people that are within. Because if you target the audience, obviously staying within your niche, targeting people who are like Spotify lovers, who are not Spotify lovers, who are like podcast lovers within your niche, you are likely not, because it's a harsh reality. If you're an audio only based podcast, you're competing with people that have clean audio. So if I'm moving from Joe Rogan, like you can only imagine the audio Joe Rogan's platform. Like there's people behind who are sound engineers. Yeah, like everything is thought out. There's professionals, people who like are like professionals doing that. So the audio is crisp. You can hear everything word for word. So as opposed to when you are a smaller podcaster, you are not exposed to like the right tools. Like the audio is still rusty. It doesn't sit well in the ears. I didn't hear that. I didn't. Like there's just so many things that you can get wrong from a technical standpoint, but that shouldn't discourage you from like releasing episodes. We are sitting on, this is like 115 episodes, but we are still growing stronger and stronger each and every day. We are releasing more and more episodes each and every day, and feel like, even though sometimes I feel like, even though I might be exaggerating when I'm like growing every day, sometimes the growth doesn't feel like growing, because it's exhausting, because it's frustrating to have to listen to, even when you don't like listen to your podcast and you're like, we could do better on the audio, and you have to hear that, and like, what is the next person thinking about this? If I myself can hear the errors within this, I don't know if I'm a perfectionist, but like I could tell the audio within the platform, it's not as great. The audio is not as great, but staying within the bounds of consistency, to say like no matter what we do, we will stay consistent and we will release episodes. It's no longer about motivation. It's no longer about the likes or who's watching or who's not watching. Ultimately it just boils down to like, what do you really like find interesting. Like you just talk about the things that you find interesting within the bounds of the niche. Even like you always need to keep that at the back of your mind. So I think this leads me to the next conversation, or to the next talking point, which is, I think I'm always reminded of like niche conversation, of niche audience, or like rounding it down and stopping to like call everyone to the platform, and like, what's your niche? Like, if you understand your niche, you can't bring everyone, because it's like, bro, like, this is the niche, and if we're not talking about this, it's not entertainment, it's not fashion, it's not culture, it's not photography, it's not videography, it's not, like, that's the niche that we are in. So if you come, you're a doctor, I'm like, that's not my niche, like, even target audience is like 22 to 27 or 34, I'm not sure, and you're like, they're totally not the niche, you know what I mean? So you need to be in the fitness world, where as you could talk about like what to eat, when to eat, exercises, like, that's niche talk, to say, okay, like, how do you also like round it down to like people who are this age, or who are in this demographic, like, you need to like also consider those things when you like speak about content, or so you need to round it down to say, like, you can speak about within the entertainment realm, you can speak about director of photography. Yeah, Mad Max, the movie that came out, Mad Max. I think, I don't remember. I think Fury is the lady's name, and it was directed by one of the guys who are like did the Mad Max movie. So you like, maybe doing that is a stretch, because like nobody knows about that guy, but totally there'll be fans of Mad Max, because the huge demographic of Mad Max people are a huge fan of, if you look at into the music, Ikuti is a fan of Mad Max. Like, what's the likelihood that a fan of what you call this, a Mad Max movie, would be a fan of, Fast Five? Or what's the likelihood that the fan of Fast Five might be a fan of, cars, with the Lightning McQueen, you like of your Lightning McQueen. So like, it's that type of talk where you're like, okay, like, now you start to see the pattern. You say, okay, like, we can talk about Pori. Like, what's the likelihood that the Pori's fans who are listening now, if Pori is within your niche, it's like, okay, we're talking to Pori. What's the likelihood that people within your platform would like you to invite Tyler ICU and still feel like, oh, this is still within niche, and would find Tyler interesting, or that conversation with Tyler interesting? So it's those type of things that you start to think about when you're like, oh, okay, like, okay, Pori, Tyler, and you start to make those connections. You're like, oh, okay, if I like my chicken, like, what's the likelihood me liking chicken? Like, if you like chicken, do you like chicken with pap? Do you like chicken with rice, or chicken with bread? Then you start to look at everything to say, okay, like, this makes more sense if chicken is rice, or like, rice in 7 colors, and like, you start to think about it to say, like, this is more a dish here. You like, sometimes Good Friday, you feel like, sometimes I feel like this is sometimes, and I'm just talking from like a cultural standpoint to say, when it's Good Friday, it makes more sense, or it's been ingrained or instilled in us. Good Friday, we eat the 7 colors, the fish and rice. You understand? So if now was to come Good Friday and say, it's like, what's going on? Like, Good Friday, we are supposed to understand. But even though that's not the standard, even though that's not the standard that you, is it about standards though? It's a social norm. Let me just say, it's a social norm. But like, okay, Friday, this is what generally, it happens, you understand? And when you step out of those bounds, you're like, I'm going to eat Nkomazi, then it starts to sound like, why Nkomazi? Rona, you want to talk about that? When you understand? Then you find, or like, within that. You can still, like, maybe Nkomazi, eat Nkomazi, but not a lot of people would be in support of Nkomazi because the social norm says you should be doing that. So the trajectory is leading, the peak is more higher on 7 colors, fish and rice. You get my point? So like, you can do that, but you won't get a lot of support from people. And even the platforms, even with the platform, that's how it works. Like, you can't do certain things, or you can't have certain conversations with people if it's out of the niche, if it's out of that pocket. You can't, because obviously if you're someone who's genuinely having those conversations because you have like genuine connection or like interest in those niches, and you're like, oh, let me just cross over talk about it. It's risky, people, especially if you are a sponsor, a sponsor centric platform where you like rely on sponsors to bring in bread, or you rely on sponsors to like bring in the money within the platform. Or like, when you talk about monetization, sponsorship is the big part of your platform, and you like going out of that niche or going out of that bounds. As much as you have interest, it might drop the numbers and it might affect the sponsorship with the people that you have collaborations with. So it's kind of risky. But if you're an independent platform, whereas everything that you do, it's in-house, you don't necessarily need to, you didn't build a platform based on like monetization. As far as monetization, you didn't build it on sponsorship. So it's much easier for you to make that move, get lower numbers, and still come back and say, oh, okay, like, this was genuine interest and it wasn't for everybody, and we understand. Then we move on, and we still listen every episode. It's just that on that moment we just wanted to release an episode that we really found interesting, So it makes more sense if you're more independent based, where everything you do financially, it's within the basis of your pocket, or it's in-house. Everything that's coming out, it's coming out of my pocket, or whoever the partner is or the founder is of the platform. It makes more sense in that sense to do a crossover, but it doesn't make sense when you do a crossover and there's sponsorships involved, that then the numbers are compromised. And if the numbers are compromised, meaning the brand awareness or whatever they're trying to push in your platform, or the eyes won't be getting the eyes that they were promised within the peak equity they were going to get. I don't know if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's the one thing that I wanted to voice. I think I voiced like 3-4 things as far as like me, sponsorship and monetization, and so, and why it's important to always remember that. And like, for me, I'm able to do crossovers every now and again, because everything that we do, it's in-house financially. Monetization, everything is like in-house. We don't rely on sponsors to like push anything that we want to push. As much as like we might not have a lot of numbers, but we don't rely on it. But I think also to not have your voice compromised, it makes more sense for you to be independent, whereas you don't have like sponsorship coming through and your voice is not compromised. Because now, if there's certain things that involve the brand that you're pushing, you're not able to fully give out your input, because now, even though say for instance you're doing a brand campaign for a skincare product, and like the side effects A, B, and C, you come outright on the platform and say, like, it's trash A, B, and C, because now you are paid to promote the product, not to degrade the product. I don't know if that makes any sense. So that's why I say, like, to a degree it compromises your voice, because now you have to be silent, and sometimes silence may be viewed as he's compromised. And yes, you are compromised, because now if Rona, we know you as someone who's always voiced something on stuff. We've known you for voicing out maybe the errors, to say like he's always vocal about such matters, but now he's in a collaboration with A, B, and C, and there's people saying this about it, and when you're quiet, then the thing. I wonder what's going on. I wonder why he's not saying anything. Then it raises an eyebrow to say like maybe he's compromised. I guess another point that I was trying to make with that. So yeah, man. I really hope that you find this episode relatable. I'm your host with the most, Lesego M, aka Shoot Your Shot, and maybe you might get a chance to call me Daddy like Cairo. Let's meet you on another exciting episode of Backroom Convos with Lesego M. Please do not forget to follow, like, subscribe to get a notification for each and every time we drop in new episode. So yeah, for emails, for anyone who has inquiries about sponsorships and everything, go to lesego@backroomconvos.com, and the website is www.backroomconvos.com. Please do enjoy this episode. Stay blessed. Cheers.